Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The night was quiet in Godric's Hollow. The air was still, the stars pale behind drifting clouds, and the faintest wind whispered through the crooked lanes of the village. Most windows were dark, save one at the edge of the lane, where a lone candle burned in the upstairs room of a small, ivy-wrapped cottage. Harry Potter sat by the window, his glasses glinting in the light, a quill forgotten in his hand. The ministry reports were spread before him, pages of parchment covered with looping handwriting and official seals. But it wasn't the words that troubled him. It was the strange chill that had settled in his chest ever since the last case. 3 attacks in 2 weeks. No sign of dark wizards, no traces of curses or jinxes. Only the victims, pale as ash, eyes open and empty, and the faint shimmer of silver light hanging in the air, fading like mist at dawn. A Patronus, or something like it. Harry rubbed his scar, though it hadn't burned in years. It was an old habit, one born of unease. The ministry's new aurors whispered theories in the corridors, a rogue charm, a forbidden experiment, even a ghostly creature feeding on magic itself. But Harry had seen something the others hadn't. At the last scene, as the silver mist had faded, he'd caught a glimpse, a flash of something within it, a shape that was wrong. A Patronus was meant to be pure light, formed from joy and hope. But this had eyes, dark, cold, watching him. He closed the report and stood, crossing to the window. Beyond the glass lay the old graveyard, quiet and still beneath the moonlight. Somewhere beneath those stones lay his parents, the reason he'd come back to live here again, to give his children a home filled with stories, not battles, peace, not fear. But peace never lasted long in Harry's world. A faint crack of apparition broke the stillness outside. Harry turned sharply, wand drawn, before he'd even thought about it. A moment later, a familiar voice called softly through the door. "Harry, it's me." He opened it to find Hermione wrapped in her ministry cloak, her hair wild from the night wind. "You're still awake?" she said with a weary smile. "Couldn't sleep?" Harry replied. "You got my owl?" Hermione nodded and stepped inside. "I came straight from the Department of Mysteries. They've been analyzing the traces from the last attack. And they found something unsettling," she said quietly. "The Patronus magic isn't just corrupted, it's reversed. Like someone pulled it inside out. They're calling it a negative manifestation." Harry frowned. "So it's not a curse cast on the victims?" "No, it is the victim. Their own Patronus, twisted, turned against them. It drains them until there's nothing left." A silence hung between them. The candle flickered, its flame bending in a sudden draft. Hermione took a breath. "There's more." The unspeakables traced the magical resonance. The first occurrence wasn't recent. It dates back nearly a century. The same pattern appeared once before, in Godric's Hollow. Harry stared at her. "Here?" She nodded. An experimental spell gone wrong. They tried to infuse a Patronus with protective enchantments, strong enough to last forever, but they bound it to something else instead, to the caster's shadow. He thought of the silver mist, of the dark eyes inside it. Hermione's voice softened. "Harry, if If this curse has resurfaced, we may already be too late. The traces are spreading. The more people cast Patronuses near one another, the faster it moves. Harry turned away, staring out at the moonlit graveyard. His Patronus, his stag, had always been a symbol of his father, of courage, of all that had kept him alive through darkness. The thought of that light turning against him made his stomach twist. Then, from somewhere far off in the village, came a sound that froze them both, a sharp, echoing cry. Like a spell, but wrong, drawn out, and hollow. Harry didn't hesitate. He seized his wand and ran for the door. Hermione followed, cloak billowing behind her. They raced through the quiet streets, their boots striking the cobblestones, until they reached the edge of the square. There, near the war memorial, a silvery haze hung in the air, swirling, restless, like smoke caught in moonlight. And at its center stood a young woman, her wand arm trembling, her face pale with fear. Harry shouted, "Get back!" But she didn't move. The haze around her thickened, shaping itself into something more solid, something alive. It was a Patronus, but its light was dim and fractured, a fox half-formed with eyes of black fire. It opened its mouth and let out a sound between a growl and a scream, and the girl fell to her knees. Harry raised his wand. "Expecto Patronum!" The stag burst forth from his wand, pure and bright, charging toward the shadowed fox. For a moment, light met darkness, and the air crackled between them. But then something strange happened. The fox turned its head toward Harry's stag, and instead of fleeing, it merged with it. The silver light flickered, shuddered, and went out. Harry staggered back, breath caught in his throat. His wand felt heavy, cold. He tried again, whispering, "Expecto Patronum," but nothing came. The silver light was gone. Hermione's voice trembled behind him. "Harry, your Patronus." But he already knew. Something inside him had changed. Something was wrong. In the distance, the church bell began to toll midnight. And as the echoes faded into the night, Harry Potter felt the first shadow of the curse take hold. The morning after the attack dawned gray and cold, the air heavy with mist that clung to the ground like a living thing. The entire village of Godric's Hollow seemed subdued, its quiet lanes filled with unease. Harry stood outside the small cottage where the young witch had fallen. The cobblestones still bore traces of silvery dust, and aurors in dark blue cloaks moved carefully through the scene, murmuring spells to preserve evidence. Harry's mind, however, was far from calm. He had spent the night trying to summon his Patronus again and again until exhaustion overcame him. Each time only sparks had come, pale flickers, as though the magic itself feared to take shape. His stag was gone. Hermione arrived at dawn with coffee in one hand and a stack of parchment in the other. "The girl's name is Elsie Flint," she said, her voice low. "Trainee from the Auror Academy. She was sent here to assist with surveillance." Harry frowned. "A trainee shouldn't have been sent alone." "She wasn't," Hermione said quietly. "Her partner was found 2 miles away, unconscious. Same magical residue." Harry's stomach turned. "She survived?" "Barely," Hermione replied. "But there's something else. You need to see this." She opened one of the parchments and pointed to a faint outline traced in ink. "This is the magical signature we detected near the girl's wand. Do you see that spiral pattern?" Harry nodded slowly. It reminded him of a whirlpool spinning inward. That pattern's identical to the one from the archives, Hermione said. From the old experiment in Godric's Hollow. Harry's voice hardened. Then whoever is behind this knows exactly what they're doing. They stepped inside the cottage where a faint smell of burnt silver lingered in the air. The walls were etched with strange patterns, residual markings from spells that had gone wild. In the center of the room lay a shattered teacup, and beside it, a small silver coin. Harry crouched and picked it up. The metal was cold to the touch, engraved with an ancient rune he recognized from his studies, a protective charm once used to anchor Patronus magic. But this one had been carved backward. Hermione leaned over his shoulder. "That's the sigil of Inversio Lumen," she murmured. "The reversal of light. It shouldn't even exist. The last time anyone attempted it, they nearly tore their own soul apart." Harry finished grimly. He straightened, his jaw tight. Whoever did this, they're trying to weaponize it again. Outside, the mist thickened, curling around the window panes like smoke. Later that day, the ministry held an emergency meeting in the Auror office. The air buzzed with tension as wizards and witches argued over theories and strategies. Ron Weasley sat across from Harry, drumming his fingers impatiently on the table. "So, let me get this straight," he said finally. "Someone's twisting Patronuses into monsters, and you think it's tied to an old experiment buried under Godric's Hollow?" "That's right," Harry said. "And now your Patronus won't show up at all?" Harry hesitated, then nodded. Ron exhaled slowly. "Blimey, mate, that's bad. You've had that stag since you were 15. "I know." Hermione spread a map across the table. "We need to locate where the experiment was conducted. The old ministry archives say it was sealed off after the accident, but the entrance was never destroyed. If the curse originated there, it might still be drawing power from whatever's left behind." Ron leaned over the map. "You mean the caves near the hollow?" "Yes," Hermione said. "The records mention something called the Mirror Vault, a chamber designed to reflect Patronus magic endlessly, amplifying it beyond natural limits." Harry's eyes narrowed. A mirror chamber. That would explain why the Patronus turned on its caster. The reflection became the shadow. Before they could speak further, the door burst open. A young Auror ran in, face pale. "Mr. Potter, there's been another one. In London this time, near the Thames. The same signs, the silver mist, the drained magic, everything." Harry grabbed his cloak. "We're going." The city was cloaked in rain by the time they arrived. The attack had taken place beneath a bridge, the stones slick and glistening. Lanterns hovered in the air, casting faint circles of light on the water below. A small crowd of aurors waited, wands drawn. One of them, a nervous-looking witch with freckles, hurried forward. "Sir, we secured the area, but there's something you'll want to see." She led them down the embankment to where the silver mist still hung, swirling in the damp air. Within it flickered a shape, half-formed, flickering like a broken flame. Hermione raised her wand. "Revelio Animus!" The mist parted, revealing the faint outline of a swan, its wings tattered, its eyes dark as ink. For a moment, it almost seemed to look at them. Then it dissipated into nothing. Harry knelt by the body of the victim, a middle-aged wizard dressed in ministry robes. His wand lay nearby, still glowing faintly. Hermione examined it, her brow furrowing. The same reversal rune, but this time it's cleaner, more controlled. Whoever cast this knew exactly what they were doing. Ron's gaze darkened. You think they're testing it? Perfecting it? Yes, Harry said quietly. And each time, they're getting closer. He turned toward the river, where the rain fell in steady sheets. The water reflected the city lights, twisting them into blurred ribbons of silver. For a moment, Harry thought he saw something moving beneath the surface, something that shimmered like a reflection out of place. He blinked, and it was gone. Harry? Hermione asked softly. He turned back. We need to find the mirror vault. If this magic started there, that's where we'll end it. Hermione nodded grimly. Then we'd better go before whoever's behind this unleashes it on the rest of the world. As they prepared to leave, a low voice drifted from behind them. Potter. Harry turned. Elsie Flint stood in the shadows beneath the bridge, wrapped in a gray cloak, her face pale but alive. Her eyes were different now, glimmering faintly with a silver sheen. Harry's breath caught. Elsie? You shouldn't be here. You need rest. She shook her head. I couldn't stay away. I saw something. When it happened, I saw the shadow. It spoke. What did it say? Hermione asked urgently. Elsie's voice trembled. It said your Patronus isn't gone, Harry. It's trapped. And if you go near the vault... She hesitated, eyes filling with dread. It said it would finish what it started. The rain fell harder then, drumming against the stone bridge. And for the first time in many years, Harry Potter felt the old, familiar chill of fate pressing close, whispering that some battles, no matter how long ago they were won, never truly ended. The rain had ceased by the following morning, leaving London draped in a thin fog that crept along the Thames like the ghost of the night before. Harry stood on the balcony of the Auror headquarters, staring across the gray skyline. The events beneath the bridge haunted him, Elsie's words most of all. His Patronus was trapped. But trapped where? In the mirror vault? Within the curse itself? Or perhaps inside him? He turned as footsteps approached. Hermione entered, her face pale from lack of sleep. I found something, she said, spreading a tattered parchment on the table. It's from the restricted archives. The mirror vault wasn't merely an experiment. It was part of a project called the Lumen Umbra Initiative. The goal was to create a Patronus that could exist even in the absence of joy, a light that could endure despair. Harry studied the old script. A Patronus born from darkness. Yes, she said softly, but the theory failed. The light couldn't survive the shadow. It twisted instead. Ron arrived moments later, clutching a steaming mug of coffee. So basically, they tried to outsmart happiness and ended up inventing a soul eater. He took a sip. Typical ministry logic. Hermione ignored him. The experiment was abandoned after the chamber collapsed. But it says here that a fragment of the original spell matrix might still remain sealed underground. She pointed to a symbol drawn on the corner of the map, a circle containing a stag's antlers. This is the sigil of containment. If the curse escaped, it might be drawing energy from what's left of the matrix. Harry nodded slowly. Then we destroy it. Hermione's eyes darkened. If we destroy it carelessly, it could take every Patronus in Britain with it. Before Harry could answer, a low hum filled the air, a vibration that seemed to come from the very walls. The lights flickered. Then, from the far end of the corridor, a silvery glow appeared. An Auror shouted, "Patronus alarm, 3rd floor!" They ran. The corridors echoed with pounding footsteps and urgent shouts. At the far end, near the training chamber, a figure stood bathed in shifting light. It was Elsie Flint, Her wand was raised, but her expression was blank, her eyes shimmering with silver. "Elsie!" Harry called, but she didn't move. The glow around her brightened until it was painful to look at. From that light emerged a shape, first formless, then sharp. It was a stag. Harry's stag. Hermione gasped. "Harry, that's yours!" But the creature's eyes were wrong. Black and hollow, its antlers wreathed in shadow. It turned toward him, and for an instant, he felt something wrench inside his chest, as though a thread were being pulled from his soul. He stumbled, clutching his wand. "Expecto Patronum," he cried, but no light came, only the echo of his own voice. The dark stag lowered its head and charged. Glass shattered, spells fired. Ron and Hermione threw up shields as Harry rolled aside. The creature struck the wall with a deafening crash, leaving a scorched mark that pulsed faintly like living skin. Elsie fell to her knees, gasping. "It's feeding! On him!" Harry forced himself upright. "Then we cut it off!" He lifted his wand, focusing with all his will. "Finite incantatum!" The stag screamed, not a sound of pain, but fury, and burst into 1,000 shards of silver. They scattered through the air, flickering like dying stars before fading into smoke. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of magic fading from the walls. Elsie collapsed, unconscious but alive. Hermione rushed to her side, checking her pulse. "She's stable, but Harry..." Her voice shook. "That wasn't just your Patronus. It was you. A piece of your magic." Harry swallowed hard. "Then I know where it's leading us. If the vault can draw a Patronus out of its caster, that's where this curse began, and where it must end." They left for Godric's Hollow at dusk. The wind had a bitter edge, the last traces of autumn clinging to the hedgerows. As they approached the fields beyond the village, the land sloped into a hollow valley where mist lay thick as wool. Hermione held the map, its enchanted ink glowing faintly. "The entrance should be near those ruins," she said, pointing to a cluster of collapsed stone arches half buried in the ground. They dismounted their brooms and advanced on foot. The air grew colder with every step. As they reached the ruins, Harry saw symbols carved into the fallen stones, spirals, antlers, stars. All old runes for light, now darkened and broken. At the base of one arch stood a stone door covered in frost. Harry brushed his fingers across it, feeling a pulse of magic beneath the surface. "This is it." Hermione examined the carvings. "It's sealed with reflection wards. They open only when light meets shadow." "Then let's see if the curse will open for me," Harry said grimly. He drew his wand and whispered, "Lumos." The light flared, and instantly the frost began to melt, revealing an inscription beneath. "Only the light that knows its darkness may pass." The door shuddered and creaked open. A rush of cold air swept out, carrying the faint scent of silver and smoke. They stepped inside. The tunnel sloped downward, its walls smooth and glassy as though carved from black crystal. Their reflections moved beside them, dim, distorted echoes in the dark glass. The further they descended, the louder the hum of magic became until the air itself vibrated with energy. At last, they emerged into a vast chamber. Mirrors lined the walls, hundreds of them tall as trees and curved like waves. In their depths flickered faint shapes, animals' faces, fragments of light. Some were bright, others twisted and broken. Hermione whispered, "The mirror vault." In the center of the floor lay a circle of silver runes, still pulsing faintly. Harry stepped closer, and the moment his foot crossed the edge, his reflection in the mirrors changed. The figure staring back at him was not entirely his own. Its eyes were darker, its expression colder, and behind it stood the shadow of the stag. His Patronus, bound and restless, he raised his wand. "Show yourself." The reflection smiled. "I already have." Hermione gasped as the mirrors began to ripple, the glass turning liquid. The reflection stepped forward, emerging into the chamber like smoke given shape. It was Harry, but not. His double's eyes burned silver, his wand a mirror of his own. "I am what you made," the shadow said softly. "The light that faced too much darkness." Harry stood firm. "You're not me." The double's expression hardened. "No, I'm what you denied, every fear, every regret. You banished me when you cast your first Patronus. But when the curse awoke, I found the way back." Ron raised his wand. "All right, that's enough out of you." But the shadow moved faster than sight, flinging a pulse of silver force that shattered the ground between them. Hermione was thrown back. Ron barely caught her before she struck the wall. The shadow advanced, each step echoing like thunder. "You cannot destroy what you refuse to accept." Harry met its gaze, his hand tightening on his wand. "Then I'll accept it and end it." He charged forward, light and shadow colliding in a flash that filled the vault with blinding brilliance, and above them the mirrors began to crack. The vault trembled as the mirrors cracked, each splinter reflecting 1,000 fragments of light and shadow. The air pulsed with wild energy like thunder trapped beneath the earth. Harry staggered to his feet, smoke curling from his wand arm as his double rose across from him, silver-eyed and steady, untouched by exhaustion. "You can't fight me," the shadow said, its voice low and echoing through the chamber. "I am your power, Potter. Every triumph, every act of courage, I carried you through it all. You only believed it was light." Harry clenched his jaw, the taste of metal on his tongue. "If that were true, I wouldn't have spent my life protecting others from you." The shadow smiled. "Protecting others or running from yourself?" With a flick of its wand, the ground split apart. Silver mist rose from the fissure, forming shapes. Dozens of creatures, half Patronus, half specter, their bodies flickering like candle flames. They surrounded Harry, their hollow eyes gleaming. Hermione's voice rang out, "Protego Maxima." A dome of blue light burst from her wand, holding the shadow creatures at bay. Ron hurled a stunning spell that cut through two of them, but they reformed instantly, gliding closer. "They're not real," Hermione cried. "They're echoes, drawn from his magic." Harry turned, his chest burning with the effort of every breath. "Then the only way to end them is to end him." He raised his wand. "Expelliarmus." The shadow parried effortlessly, sending the red jet spiraling back toward him. Harry barely dodged. "You're predictable," the reflection said, its voice now colder, harsher. "All your life you've clung to the same spells, the same hopes, the same light. You never learned the power without darkness is weakness." Harry's wand hand trembled. For a fleeting moment he saw flashes of memory. Cedric's death, Sirius falling through the veil, Dumbledore's lifeless form, the war, the bodies. He had spent years burying the pain, telling himself he had to be strong, that light alone was enough. The shadow stepped closer, its wand lowering slightly. "You think you conquered the darkness. You merely hid it. I am what remains when the hiding ends." Hermione shouted, "Harry, don't listen!" But her voice was distant, as if coming through fog. The mirrors flickered again. In their depths, Harry saw not just himself, but faces from his past, His parents, Dumbledore, Lupin, Tonks, Fred, they looked at him silently, their forms rippling in the broken glass, and behind them the shadow's reflection towered, vast and endless. Harry steadied himself. "You're right," he said quietly. "I did hide it. Because if I hadn't, it would have consumed me. And now it will," said the shadow, and raised its wand. The spell came like a lance of silver fire. Harry crossed wands with it, their beams colliding midair, locking them in a web of light that crackled and screamed. The vault trembled again, mirrors shattering one by one. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and ash. Hermione and Ron struggled to maintain their shields as the reflected energies rippled outward. Elsie, still pale but conscious, crawled toward the center of the chamber. "The runes!" she gasped. "Break the circle, it's feeding on it." Hermione turned. The silver circle beneath their feet was pulsing brighter with every clash, siphoning power from both combatants. She aimed her wand. Confringo. The rune circle exploded. A wave of light tore through the chamber, hurling everyone backward. When the glare faded, Harry found himself on his knees, breath ragged, the taste of blood in his mouth. His shadow double staggered as well, its edges flickering like a candle's last breath. Harry forced himself to stand. "It's over." But the reflection smiled, a hollow, sad smile. "You can't destroy me, Potter. You are me." Then the shadow dissolved, breaking apart into streaks of silver that rushed toward him. The light struck Harry's chest and sank inside like cold fire. He screamed, falling to his hands and knees. The air filled with the echo of his own voice as his body trembled with energy too great to contain. Hermione knelt beside him. "Harry, Harry, stay with me." He gasped for breath. For an instant he saw through both eyes, his own and the shadow's. The world shimmered in two halves, one bathed in light, the other veiled in darkness. He felt the cold fury of his reflection, the bitterness of every loss he had ever endured. But beneath it all there was something else. Peace. Acceptance. Slowly he pressed his palm to the floor and whispered, "Expecto Patronum." This time the light came, not bright and pure, but deep and steady, glowing from within him rather than his wand. The stag appeared again, but it was different. Its body gleamed with silver and shadow entwined, its eyes calm and knowing. It bowed its head to him, and as it did, the last cracks in the mirrors mended themselves, sealing the vault once more. The hum of magic subsided. The air grew still. Hermione and Ron helped him to his feet. "You did it," Ron said, staring at the stag in awe. "You actually tamed it." Harry shook his head. "Not tamed? Balanced?" He watched the stag fade into mist, leaving only a faint shimmer of silver in the air. The curse was never meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be understood. Hermione looked at the mirrors, now reflecting only their weary faces. Then the darkness was part of the light all along? Harry nodded. A Patronus isn't just happiness, it's memory, joy born from loss. Without the shadow, the light would never mean anything. Elsie stood, leaning weakly on the wall. "So what happens now? To the vault? To the curse?" Harry turned toward the chamber's heart. "It will rest for now, as long as no one tries to awaken it again." He touched the nearest mirror. For a moment it reflected not his face, but his father's, smiling faintly, proud. Then the image faded, leaving only the reflection of a man older, steadier, at peace. They left the vault as dawn began to break over the valley. The mist lifted, revealing the ruins bathed in pale gold light. Birds stirred in the hedgerows, and the first warmth of morning touched the frost. As they mounted their brooms, Hermione glanced back at the hill. "Will your Patronus return to what it was?" Harry looked down at his wand, then at the rising sun. "No," he said quietly, "and that's all right." They rose into the sky, the wind cool against their faces, leaving the hollow and its secrets behind. But as Harry turned for one last glance, he thought he saw, far below, a shimmer of silver light standing among the ruins. His stag, silent and whole, watching him go. He smiled faintly. The curse was broken. But the lesson it carried would remain with him always, and though he did not yet know it, the shadow within his light would one day guide him again when a new darkness rose, and the world once more called his name. In the weeks that followed, the Ministry of Magic was a place of whispers. The official report named the event the Patronus Distortion Incident, though those who had been there, the Aurors, the Unspeakables, and those who had seen the sky over Godric's Hollow flare with silver fire, spoke of it in quieter tones, as though the words themselves could call the curse back. Harry returned to his post at the Auror office, but something in him had shifted. He walked the same halls, read the same reports, trained the same recruits, and yet he felt as though he were moving through a reflection of his old life. The vault had not just taken his energy, it had touched something deeper. His Patronus, when summoned, still appeared, but its form was now faint, half-shadowed, as though the stag had become a creature of both light and dusk. He did not fear it, though others did. Whispers followed him down the corridor. Some said his magic had been tainted. Others claimed he had bound the curse inside himself to keep it from spreading. He ignored them all. He had faced darker things than gossip. Hermione, now deputy head of magical law enforcement, handled the ministry's public response. She worked long nights, drafting new regulations, her quill moving with sharp precision. "We must never attempt to manipulate Patronus magic again," she said during one of their late meetings. "It's not a weapon, it's a reflection of the soul. When people forget that, the line between protector and destroyer vanishes." Ron, who had long since taken charge of the Auror Tactical Division, leaned back in his chair with a sigh. "You sound like Dumbledore, you know. You even frown like him when you're about to scold me." Hermione didn't look up. "That's because you always need scolding, Ronald." Harry smiled faintly at their familiar banter. It was a comfort, a small piece of normalcy, but beneath it his thoughts were elsewhere, on the girl who had seen the shadow before anyone else. Elsie Flint had been kept under observation in the spell damage ward at St. Mungo's. The healer said she was stable, though traces of the cursed magic lingered in her aura. Harry visited her one evening after work, bringing with him a simple white flower from the ministry garden. A small gesture of peace. She was sitting by the window, looking out over London's lights. When she turned, her eyes glimmered faintly silver. "You came," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Sometimes the world looks different. The light bends wrong like it did in the vault, but the healers say it's fading." He nodded. "That's good." Elsie studied him a moment. "It's still inside you, isn't it?" "The shadow." Harry hesitated. "Yes, but it's quieter now." She smiled faintly. "You didn't destroy it. You made peace with it?" He met her gaze. "We can't destroy what's part of us, only learn how to live with it. For a while they sat in silence, the soft hum of the city below filling the room. Then she said, "When I was in the curse, before you broke it, I heard something. Voices like echoes from the mirrors. They said the vault was never sealed completely. There's another chamber beneath it." Harry frowned. "Another chamber?" She nodded slowly. "They called it the Wellspring, a place where all the light drawn from those experiments was stored. If it's still active," he felt a chill run through him, "then the vault isn't truly dormant." That night, as he returned home to the cottage in Godric's Hollow, the thought would not leave his mind. The Wellspring, the source of all that power. If it still existed, the curse was not gone, merely sleeping. The next morning he met Hermione and Ron in his office. The walls were lined with parchment and maps, the air filled with the smell of coffee and parchment dust. "We're going back," he said without preamble. Hermione looked up sharply. "Back to the vault? There's something we missed." A second chamber beneath the main one. Elsie heard it through the curse's echo. Ron groaned. "Brilliant. Because clearly we didn't almost die enough the first time." But even as he complained, he was already reaching for his wand. 2 days later, they returned to Godric's Hollow under cover of night. The stars were cold and clear, the wind carrying the faint scent of pine. The ruins looked as they had before, silent, ancient, and still. Yet when Harry stepped onto the grass above the vault, he felt the pulse of magic beneath his feet, faint but steady, like a sleeping heartbeat. "This way," Hermione said, scanning the map she had reconstructed from the archives. "If the Wellspring exists, it should be beneath the lowest mirror chamber." They descended into the dark once more. The mirrors greeted them with their ghostly reflections, but this time they were quiet, their surfaces smooth and dim. No flickers of motion, no whispers of light. At the far wall, Hermione traced her wand along a series of runes. They glowed faintly, revealing a hidden passage spiraling downward. A stair of obsidian stone descended into the earth. Ron muttered, "Nothing good ever starts with a secret stair." The tunnel opened into a cavern vast enough to swallow the Hogwarts Great Hall. The walls pulsed faintly with silver veins of magic that ran like roots through the rock. At the center of the chamber was a pool, a perfect circle of still water, glowing with light from below. "The Wellspring," Hermione breathed. Harry approached slowly. The light seemed alive, shifting like breath. When he knelt at the edge, he saw faces flicker within it. Faces of people long gone, their expressions calm, watchful. "The essence of the Patronus," Hermione said softly. "All the light that was taken, stored here." Ron knelt beside her. "And if someone tried to take it again?" "It would awaken the curse anew," she whispered. Harry stared into the pool. Deep below the surface, something stirred. A faint movement, a pulse like a heartbeat. Then a voice, faint and distant, echoed through the chamber. "Help me." They froze. The voice came again, clearer this time, trembling with fear. "Please help me." Hermione's face went pale. "That's a living echo," she said. "Someone's soul fragment trapped within the Wellspring." Harry's hand tightened on his wand. "Who?" The answer came not in words, but in form. The light rippled, and from its depths a figure began to rise, a silhouette made of silver mist, its shape shifting, human, then beast, then both. It climbed from the water and stood before them, dripping light like tears. Its eyes opened, dark, familiar, and infinitely sad. Hermione whispered, "Merlin's beard. It's another Patronus." But Harry already knew what he was seeing. The creature's outline flickered, solidifying into the shape of a man with a stag's antlers and the faintest echo of his own face. The wellspring had not just stored the light of the experiments, it had absorbed it. The trapped echoes of every wizard who had ever cast a Patronus near the cursed site lived within it, forming one vast, restless spirit. And now, after a century of silence, it had awakened. The light in the cavern began to swell, brighter and brighter, until the pool was a storm of silver flame. The ground trembled, and the voice rose to a cry that shook the air. "Free us!" Hermione shouted. "Harry, the whole chamber's destabilizing!" But Harry couldn't move. He stood at the edge of the pool, his reflection twisting in the seething light. For an instant he saw them again, the lost, the fallen, all those who had cast their light into the world, and beneath their cries he felt the faint pulse of something else, a call not of pain but of purpose. The curse was not finished, its story was not done. Harry raised his wand, the silver glow reflecting in his eyes. "Then we free them," he said, and the wellspring erupted. The cavern convulsed as light burst from the wellspring, flooding every crevice of the stone. The roar of it was like 1,000 voices screaming and singing at once, neither wholly human nor wholly divine. The silver fire surged upward, swirling into a vast column that reached the roof of the chamber and shattered it like glass. Fragments of rock and light rained down. "Shields!" Hermione shouted, her wand flashing. A dome of blue magic flared into being above them just as the first fragments struck. The air quivered, the noise deafening, and still the light rose higher. At the center of it all, Harry stood unmoving, his wand raised, his eyes locked upon the storm. Within the column of light, the shapes became clearer. Hundreds of Patronuses, each one twisted and bound, spiraling around one another in an endless dance of torment. A wolf, a horse, a phoenix, even a serpent, all silver ghosts tangled in the current of raw magic. "They're trapped," Harry murmured. "Every one of them. The light's been imprisoned for too long." "Harry, get back!" Hermione called. "You can't control that power. It's feeding on itself." But he took another step closer. The energy brushed his skin like fire and frost all at once. Somewhere deep within the roar, he thought he heard something. His own stag calling to him, its voice lost in the chaos. He closed his eyes, reaching for that sound. The memory came to him unbidden. A cold night long ago, his wand raised against a swarm of Dementors, his father's voice whispering through the years. Expecto Patronum. The first time he had learned that light could drive away darkness. That hope itself could be a shield. He opened his eyes. "We can't destroy the wellspring," he said softly. "We must release it." Hermione's eyes widened. "You'll be torn apart." Harry looked back at her, a calm resolve in his face. "Not if I become part of it first." He stepped forward before either she or Ron could stop him. His boots struck the stone with purpose. Each step he took made the ground flare brighter until he stood at the very edge of the pool. The surface shimmered like liquid moonlight. He raised his wand. Expecto Patronum. The word was a cry and a command. Silver light burst from the tip of his wand, stronger than before, alive and wild. The stag formed again, its eyes deep with both sorrow and courage. It leapt forward, plunging into the wellspring. The pool exploded in radiance. The chamber filled with the blinding brilliance of 1,000 Patronuses set free. Ron shielded his eyes. Hermione's spell dome began to crack beneath the pressure. Through it all, Harry remained still, his silhouette bathed in the storm. The light reached for him, wrapping around him in coils of shimmering flame. He felt it pour into him, every memory, every ounce of hope, every fragment of magic that had been trapped for generations. And with it came their pain. He saw glimpses of lives long past, the unspeakables who had first created the curse, their regret, their longing for forgiveness, the witches and wizards who had been consumed by their own spells, the countless souls who had tried to protect others and lost themselves in the process. He bore their memories as though they were his own, and through it all, the voice of his father echoed again. "You are not alone, Harry." The light began to change. The wild flare softened, turning calm, gentle, steady. The roar faded into silence. Hermione dared to lower her shield. The storm had ended. The chamber was unrecognizable, its walls smooth and glass-like, the silver veins gone. The pool was gone too. In its place lay a shallow basin filled with still, clear water that reflected the faint glow of their wands. Harry stood at the center, his wand lowered, his face pale but peaceful. His Patronus stood beside him, no longer a creature of pure silver, but something deeper. Its body gleamed with streaks of shadow and light, woven together like smoke and sunlight. Ron broke the silence first. "Blimey, you actually did it." Hermione exhaled shakily, lowering her wand. "You didn't just release the wellspring, you absorbed it." Harry looked down at his reflection in the water. For a moment, the light flickered across his face, and his eyes seemed to glow faintly silver. "It had to go somewhere," he said softly. Hermione frowned, stepping closer. "Harry, that kind of energy, it could tear you apart over time. The curse isn't gone. It's bound to you now." "I know." The three of them stood in silence for a while, listening to the faint hum that still lingered in the air, like the dying echo of a song. At last, Ron spoke again. "What now? We can't just leave this place open. Someone could stumble on it." Harry nodded slowly. "Then we seal it, for good this time." He turned his wand toward the chamber walls. Claudo lux aeterna. Light burst outward, forming runes that etched themselves into the stone. The cavern trembled once more, and the entrance behind them began to close, stone folding over stone. As the last gap sealed, the only light that remained was from their wands. When it was done, they stood in silence again, the echo of magic fading into stillness. Hermione touched Harry's shoulder. "Are you all right?" He smiled faintly. "For now." As they ascended the long stair, the air grew warmer, the darkness thinning. At last, they emerged beneath the open sky. The night was deep, scattered with stars, and the village below slept in peaceful silence. Ron let out a long breath. "If I never see another cursed cave again, it'll be too soon." Hermione gave him a look, but her voice was gentle. "You say that after every mission, and I always mean it." Harry looked back toward the hillside. The ruins stood quiet, their stones silvered by moonlight. The ground above the wellspring no longer pulsed with magic. It was still at last. He felt something settle within him as he watched it, like a knot finally untied. But beneath that peace, he sensed the faint hum of the light still living in him. A quiet presence, neither dark nor pure, simply there. When they returned to the ministry days later, there was no fanfare, no grand announcement. The world would never know what had slept beneath Godric's hollow, nor how close that light had come to consuming everything. In the privacy of his office, Harry took out his wand and whispered once more, "Expecto Patronum." The stag appeared, steady, magnificent, its form now luminous with both shadow and glow. It stood quietly before him, watching him with calm understanding. Harry smiled. "We did it," he murmured, "didn't we?" The stag bowed its head, and for a fleeting instant he could have sworn he heard the echo of his father's laughter in the distance. Outside, dawn broke over London, pale light spilling across the city. Another day had begun, ordinary and calm. Yet within Harry Potter burned the memory of Silver Fire, a reminder that light and darkness were not enemies, but reflections, bound forever in the same spell. And though he could never tell the world what had passed in the depths below, he knew this truth would guide him all his days. The truest Patronus was not born from joy alone, but from the courage to face the shadow that walked beside it. Winter crept slowly across Britain, laying its pale hand upon the hills and hedgerows. Frost sparkled on every window pane, and the air carried that sharp, clean scent of snow not yet fallen. In the heart of London, beneath the enchanted ceilings of the Ministry of Magic, the world seemed quieter than usual, as if the long shadows of autumn had taken the noise with them. Harry sat alone in his office, the fire burning low in the grate. On his desk lay a stack of parchment reports, each bearing the same heading in deep blue ink: residual magical fluctuations, post-wellspring manifestations. He had read them all a dozen times, but the words still gave him pause. Unexplained silver glows near old wizarding sites, brief flashes of Patronus energy where no wands had been drawn, magical creatures behaving strangely under moonlight. It was not the curse. No, the wellspring had been sealed, but its echoes remained, like ripples in still water. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his scar, though it hadn't ached in years. It was simply habit, a gesture of unease that never quite left him. There was peace in the world now, but not stillness. There never was, not for long. A knock came at the door. "Come in," he called. Hermione entered, wrapped in a heavy winter cloak, parchment tucked beneath her arm. Her expression was weary but composed. "I thought you'd still be here," she said. "You know me too well," Harry replied with a small smile. "I do," she said, setting down the parchment. "The Wellspring reports. I've read them. You're not imagining it. There's something stirring again." Harry frowned. "You think it's the same energy?" "Not the curse," she said firmly, "but something connected to it. The light that was released didn't simply vanish, it spread. It's being drawn to places where great magic once lived. Hogwarts, the Forbidden Forest, even the ruins of Azkaban." He studied her face. "You think it's dangerous?" She hesitated. "Not yet. But light, even pure light, can be dangerous if it's left without a guide." Before Harry could answer, the door burst open and Ron entered, his face flushed from the cold. "You'll never believe what's just happened," he said, breathless. "One of our patrols up north, near the ruins of the old Azkaban fortress, reported seeing a Patronus, a phoenix, just appeared out of nowhere, flying circles over the sea." Hermione's eyes widened. "A phoenix? There hasn't been one since Dumbledore," Harry finished quietly. The room fell silent. Ron shifted uneasily. "Could it be, a sign?" Harry stood slowly, his gaze distant. "A sign or a summons?" He looked to Hermione. "We'll go, tonight." The journey to the northern coast was long and bitter. The wind howled over the waves, and the sea crashed endlessly against the black cliffs. The remains of Azkaban lay on a small outcropping of rock, little more than twisted stone and iron. After the fall of the Dementors, the fortress had been abandoned, left to the storms and gulls. They arrived near midnight, cloaked against the cold. The air shimmered faintly with magic. Even from the shore, Harry could sense it, a pulsing rhythm, faint but steady like the heartbeat of the world. "There," Hermione said, pointing toward the highest peak. A faint light flickered above the ruins, wavering like a candle flame. They climbed the slippery stones, wands drawn, the waves crashing below them. When they reached the summit, the sight before them stopped them in their tracks. A great silver phoenix circled in the air, its wings trailing sparks that fell into the sea like stars. Its cry was pure and piercing, a sound that filled the sky. For a moment it seemed almost alive, until Harry realized it was not made of flesh, but of light. Hermione whispered, "A Patronus, but whose?" The phoenix turned in the air, and for an instant its eyes met Harry's. In that moment a flood of warmth filled him, and a voice, not spoken but remembered, echoed in his mind. "Do not mourn the light that fades, for it always finds its way back to those who remember." "Dumbledore," he breathed. The phoenix let out another cry and dived. Its wings struck the ruined stone, but instead of shattering, it passed through, revealing a glow beneath the surface. The ground trembled, and a sigil appeared, old, ancient, burning faintly with silver fire. Hermione gasped. "That's a wellspring mark." Harry knelt, brushing snow from the symbol. The runes were familiar, fragments of the same light-binding script they had seen in the vault. Only this one pulsed with a new rhythm, as though something below the earth had awakened. Ron's voice was tight. "Tell me we don't have to go down there again." But Harry didn't answer. He could feel it, the pull of the magic calling to him, faint but undeniable. "It's spreading," he said softly. "The light from the wellspring. It's looking for something." Hermione nodded grimly. "A vessel. It needs to anchor itself or it will unravel the balance." Harry stood. "Then we find where it's going and stop it." The phoenix soared once more into the sky, its song echoing over the sea, and with a final burst of light, it vanished. The sigil on the ground flickered and went out, leaving only cold stone behind. For a long time they stood in silence, the waves crashing below. At last, Hermione spoke. "Do you think it was really him?" Harry looked out over the horizon where dawn's first light began to color the clouds. "Maybe not him," he said quietly, "but his magic, perhaps, his memory." They returned to London the next day, their minds heavy with thought. For days afterward, Harry could not shake the feeling that something vast and unseen was unfolding across the wizarding world, a slow stirring of forces too old to name. He began to see faint glimmers in the corners of his vision, flashes of silver light that vanished when he turned his head. At night, when he dreamed, he saw the wellspring again, and from its depths rose not darkness but light, seeking, searching. One evening, as snow began to fall over Godric's Hollow, Harry stood by the window of his cottage, watching the flakes drift down like ash. In the reflection of the glass, he saw the faint shimmer of his Patronus standing beside him, silent, watching the sky. He whispered, "What are you trying to show me?" The stag turned its head, its form flickering slightly, and then, without warning, it vanished into the night. Harry grabbed his cloak and wand and stepped outside. The snow was deep, muffling all sound. He followed the faint trail of hoof prints glowing faintly on the ground, leading him out beyond the village, across the frozen fields, and into the forest. At last the prints ended before a great oak. Hanging from one of its branches was something small and silver, a coin glowing faintly in the darkness. He took it gently in his hand, his breath catching. It was engraved with the rune of the inversio lumen, the reversal of light, the very mark that had begun it all. But this one was whole, perfect, untouched by curse or decay. And as he held it, he heard again that same whisper from the wellspring. The light remembers. Harry turned the coin over, and on its other side, freshly carved as though by invisible hand, were words that made his heart quicken. The shadow waits where the light cannot follow. Snow swirled around him, cold and silent. He looked toward the forest's depths, where the darkness grew thick between the trees. Whatever had been released from the wellspring was not finished. Not yet. Harry closed his fist around the coin, its light burning faintly against his palm, and began to walk toward the darkness once more. The path into the forest wound like a black ribbon beneath the pale snow. The trees stood close together, their branches heavy with frost, their roots gnarled and ancient. The night was utterly still, so still that Harry could hear the sound of his own breath and the crunch of snow beneath his boots. The silver coin glowed softly in his palm, its light faint but steady, as though leading him onward. He'd walked this forest many times before. Its edges brushed the fields behind Godric's Hollow, and his children had once played beneath its trees. But tonight it felt older, different, as though the forest itself were awake, listening. The deeper he went, the colder it grew. The air shimmered faintly, and shadows seemed to move where none should. It was not fear he felt, but anticipation, a strange pull in his chest like a whisper from the wellspring's depths. The coin grew warmer in his hand. The runes carved upon its surface began to shift, their lines rearranging into a new pattern. He stopped, holding it up to the moonlight. The symbols now formed a circle of antlers, his father's Patronus, the mark of the stag. Before he could think further, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath him. The snow stirred, swirling in a sudden wind that carried with it a faint glimmer of silver light. It gathered between the trees, twisting, shaping itself until a figure stood before him, a shadow wrapped in pale glow, neither solid nor ghost. Harry's wand was in his hand before he realized it. "Show yourself," he said quietly. The figure tilted its head. When it spoke, its voice was soft, layered, like the echo of many voices woven together. "You carry the wellspring within you?" Harry's grip tightened on his wand. "Who are you?" The figure stepped closer, the light revealing the faint outline of robes and long hair that moved like mist. "Once," it said, "we were guardians of the light. We kept the wellspring's balance. But when mortals sought to bind it, we were consumed by it." Harry's heart quickened. "You're one of the unspeakables, the ones who created the curse." A pause. What remains of them? Fragments, reflections. The figure's form flickered. "The light you freed seeks a home, Potter. It cannot rest. It follows the one who holds its heart." Harry realized with a sudden chill that it meant him. "Then what does it want?" The figure raised its head. Its eyes were endless and sorrowful. "To finish what was begun, the wellspring's light was meant to join with the dark to create balance eternal, but the darkness was never found." Harry frowned. You mean the shadow, the curse that turned Patronus's inside out. Yes, it fled when you freed the light, but it lives still, waiting in the places where joy cannot dwell. The coin in his hand pulsed once, bright and sharp. Then it's calling to me, he murmured, and the shadow wants the light back. The figure nodded slowly. And if they meet again, without balance, the world will burn with brilliance that destroys instead of saves. Before Harry could speak, the figure's light began to fade. Its final words drifted on the cold air. Seek the mirror that never lies. Only there can light and shadow stand as one. Then it was gone. The snow fell again, erasing all trace of its presence. Harry stood alone, the forest silent around him. He turned the coin once more in his hand. The antlered symbol was gone. In its place now shimmered the faint outline of a mirror, tall, elegant, familiar. The mirror of Arist, he whispered. A memory stirred of a long hall beneath Hogwarts, of a boy staring into glass that showed not what was, but what the heart desired. Could that mirror still exist after all these years? He knew what he had to do. The next morning, Harry stood before the gates of Hogwarts. Snow drifted over the castle towers, and the windows glowed warmly against the gray sky. Students hurried across the courtyard, scarves fluttering in the wind. It was almost as though nothing had changed, as though the years had folded in on themselves. Professor Longbottom met him at the steps, his smile bright beneath a dusting of snow. Harry, you should have told me you were coming. I'd have had the elves prepare something warm. Harry clasped his old friend's shoulder. I won't stay long, Neville. I need to find something. The mirror of Arist, was it ever recovered after the war? Neville's smile faded. The mirror? No one's seen it since the days of Dumbledore. Some say it was destroyed when the Room of Requirement burned. He hesitated, but others think it was moved, hidden where no one could misuse it again. Do you know where? Neville shook his head. No, but if anyone might have an idea, it's Professor McGonagall. The headmistress's office was much as it had always been, lined with portraits of past headmasters, shelves filled with scrolls and quills, and the faint scent of tea and ink. McGonagall, older now but still sharp-eyed, looked up as Harry entered. Mr. Potter, she said with the same mix of fondness and exasperation she had always shown him, to what do I owe this unannounced visit? He told her everything, the coin, the vision in the forest, the voice that had spoken of balance. As he finished, she sat in silence, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. The mirror of Arist was not destroyed. Dumbledore had it moved to a place of great stillness, a sanctuary for lost magic, the Forbidden Forest. Harry's brow furrowed. The forest again? McGonagall nodded. There is a glade near the heart of it, hidden by enchantments older than the school itself. It was there that Dumbledore once communed with the spirits of ancient magic. If the mirror still exists, that is where it will be. Harry rose. Then that's where I'll go. The old witch's gaze softened. Be careful, Harry. The mirror reveals more than desire. It reflects the truth of the soul. And you, perhaps more than any, know how dangerous that can be. He inclined his head. I'll remember. Night had fallen by the time Harry reached the Forbidden Forest once more. The moon hung low, casting pale light upon the snow-laden boughs. The trees here were older than the castle, older than memory itself. Their roots wound deep into the earth where ancient magics slept. He followed the pull of the coin in his hand, its light steady and sure. At last he came upon a clearing where the snow did not fall. The air shimmered faintly, and at the center stood the mirror. It was, as he remembered, tall and gilded, its surface flawless and alive. Frost rimmed its edges, and moonlight glowed upon its glass like liquid silver. He stepped closer. His reflection formed slowly, wavering, then sharpening. But what he saw made him stop. In the glass he stood not alone. Behind him was the shadow, the same figure that had once fought him in the vault. But its eyes were not cruel now. They were calm, waiting. Then the shadow spoke, not aloud, but from within the glass. "You carry what is mine." Harry raised the coin. "The light seeks you. The balance must be restored." The shadow's reflection reached out, its hand pressing against the inside of the mirror. "Then join me. Let light and dark become one, as they were meant to be." For a moment, the world held its breath. The air trembled with power. The coin blazed in his hand, and the mirror shone like a second sun. Harry hesitated only a heartbeat, then stepped forward, pressing his hand to the glass. Cold fire raced through him. The reflection met his gaze, and the world shattered into light. Light enveloped Harry in a rushing wave, blinding, formless, endless. It was not pain that filled him, but something deeper, a sense of being unmade and remade in a single breath. For an instant, there was no ground beneath his feet, no air in his lungs, no sound but the hum of the world's oldest magic. Then the brilliance dimmed, and he found himself standing not before the mirror, but within it. The world around him shimmered like glass. The sky was silver, the ground a reflective surface that rippled beneath his boots like water. He could see his own reflection walking beside him, no longer shadowed but whole, identical in every way except for its eyes. Those eyes burned softly with light and darkness intertwined, twin stars in endless balance. "So," said the reflection, its voice echoing faintly, "we meet as one." Harry took a cautious step forward. "Where am I?" "In between," the reflection replied. "The mirror shows truth, and truth cannot be seen in one world alone. You stand where light and shadow meet, the heart of what you carry." The air around them flickered, forming shapes that drifted like smoke, images from Harry's life. He saw his parents holding him as a child, the glint of his first broomstick, the faces of Ron and Hermione at Hogwarts. He saw battles, victories, losses. All of them shone like fragments of glass suspended in the air. "This is your soul," the reflection said quietly. "All that you are, but it is also what the wellspring sought. A vessel capable of holding both hope and despair without breaking." Harry turned toward it, his expression hard. "If you mean to take it, you'll have to fight me again." The reflection smiled faintly. "You still believe in battles, but this is not one." The glass beneath them rippled, and from its surface rose two forms of light, one brilliant and white, the other deep and shadowed. They circled each other, dancing like fire and smoke. "The world was never meant to divide them," the reflection said. "Light without shadow blinds. Shadow without light devours. Together they create the shape of things, the form of truth." Harry watched as the lights merged briefly, then tore apart again, sending ripples through the mirror realm. So the wellspring wanted to reunite them. "Yes," the reflection answered, "and now that power lives in you. You hold the choice that was denied to those who came before." "What choice? To keep them separate or to join them forever?" The ground trembled, and from the rippling glass rose shapes of silver mist, people, countless people, their faces pale echoes. He recognized some from the wellspring, the lost souls of those who had tried to command the Patronus curse, their eyes hollow, their bodies flickering. "They are bound to the rift," said the reflection. "When the light and shadow were torn apart, they were caught between. You freed their light, but their darkness remains. Unless you restore the balance, they will wander forever." Harry's heart clenched as he looked at them. So many faces, so many lives consumed by magic gone wrong. He stepped forward, his hand trembling. "Then tell me how to end it." The reflection's expression softened. "You already know. You must merge what was divided. Let the shadow within you and the light within me become one again. But doing so will bind the power to your soul completely. You will never be free of it. You will carry it until the end of your days." Harry looked out across the sea of lost reflections, their faint eyes turned toward him like stars waiting for dawn. He thought of his children, his friends, of all the lives that might yet be touched by this restless magic if he failed. He met his reflection's gaze. "Then let it be bound." The reflection nodded once. "So be it." The air crackled. Light surged from the ground, rising in threads that wove themselves around Harry and his double. The brilliance was unbearable, the sound a deep, resonant hum that filled every corner of his being. The two figures stepped toward one another, their forms blurring until the line between them vanished. Pain and peace struck him at once. He felt every memory, every thought, every heartbeat, his and its, merge into one. The light burned through him like truth, the shadow like mercy. He saw everything that had ever been, every choice that had ever shaped him. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the storm ceased. He stood alone again, but changed. The mirror stretched before him, its surface calm and clear. His reflection stared back, not brighter, not darker, but whole. His Patronus appeared beside him, silent and radiant, its form neither silver nor shadow, but both, shifting softly between the two. The mirror spoke in Dumbledore's voice, gentle, amused, timeless. "You have learned at last, Harry, that no magic is purely good or evil. It is the heart that wields it which decides." Harry smiled faintly. "I think I finally understand." "Then step through," said the voice. "The balance is restored." He took a breath and walked forward. The glass rippled once more, and the world of light and reflection faded around him. He awoke on the forest floor. The air was cold and damp, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees. Snow lay on his cloak, and the mirror stood silent before him, its surface dull and lifeless now. The coin was gone. Hermione's voice called his name from somewhere nearby, and moments later she and Ron burst through the trees. Hermione knelt beside him, relief flooding her face. "Harry, we thought we'd lost you." He sat up slowly, rubbing his temples. "No," he said softly. "Not lost, just returned." Ron offered him a hand. "You vanished right into the glass. There was this flash, then nothing. We've been searching all night." Harry stood, unsteady but alive. He looked at the mirror one last time. Its surface reflected only the quiet forest now. But in its depths, he thought he saw a flicker, a faint glimmer of silver light, calm and still. "It's done," he said. "The light and the shadow are one again." Hermione looked uncertain. "And what of you? You said before the power would bind itself to you forever." Harry smiled faintly. "It has. But it's no burden. It feels right, balanced." They left the clearing as the sun rose, its rays spilling gold through the trees. The world felt cleaner somehow, lighter. Birds sang in the branches, their voices carrying through the morning air. At the forest's edge, Harry turned back one final time. The mirror of Arist stood half-shrouded in mist, its glass catching the sunrise. For a moment it seemed to glow from within, as though acknowledging the end of its long vigil. When he returned home to Godric's Hollow that evening, Ginny was waiting at the door, worry etched across her face. He drew her into an embrace, holding her for a long time, saying nothing. The warmth of home, the laughter of his children, the soft light of the hearth, all of it felt sharper, more vivid. Later, as night fell, he stepped outside and lifted his wand to the sky. Expecto Patronum. The stag appeared once more, tall and serene, but now, within its glow, shadows moved softly like silk. It stood at peace, neither darkness nor light, but both together. Harry watched it for a long while as it gazed back at him, and in that still, perfect moment, he understood that the curse had never been a curse at all, but a lesson the world had been trying to teach him since the very beginning, that even in the darkest night, light does not destroy the shadow. It learns to shine beside it. Winter melted slowly into spring. The snow that had blanketed Godric's Hollow began to retreat into the hollows of fields and the shadows of trees, revealing dark, wet earth and the first green shoots of life returning. The air no longer carried the sharp sting of frost, but a softness, a promise. Yet for Harry, peace still felt like a fragile thing, something easily disturbed by the faintest whisper of magic. He had thought that after the mirror, the world would quiet itself. That balance restored would mean stillness, but magic rarely lay still. It flowed like a river through all things, always seeking, always changing its course. He saw its signs in the smallest ways. The silver glow that followed his Patronus no longer faded as quickly as before. When he conjured it, the light lingered in the air for long moments, curling around him like mist. Children in the village began to report seeing faint shapes in the twilight, foxes, owls, wolves, wandering through the fields before vanishing with a shimmer. One evening as he walked home beneath the rising moon, Harry paused on the lane that led past the graveyard. His breath caught. At the far end, standing before the stones where his parents rested, a silver figure waited, his Patronus. It gazed at him with calm eyes, then turned its head toward the graves and bowed. He understood. The light he carried now was not bound to fight or defense alone. It was a remembrance, a promise that what was lost could still return in some gentler form. When he reached home, Ginny was reading by the fire, her hair glinting in the firelight. James and Albus were upstairs, arguing over a game of wizard chess, their laughter echoing faintly through the walls. Lily slept, curled on the sofa, her small hand clutching one of the old Quidditch figurines Harry had kept from his youth. "You're smiling," Ginny said without looking up. "Am I?" "You are. That's dangerous. Means you're about to do something reckless again." He chuckled softly and sat beside her. "No, just thinking about balance, about how much we take it for granted." She set her book aside and looked at him properly. "You've seemed different lately, calmer, as if something heavy finally lifted." He hesitated, glancing toward the window where the moonlight spilled across the glass. "Something did, but in its place something else has settled. Not a burden exactly." More like a companion? Ginny's eyes softened. You always carry too much alone, Harry. Maybe it's time you let the rest of us share the weight. He smiled. Maybe it's time I finally learn how. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of blossoms from the orchard. The seasons had turned. Weeks later, Harry found himself summoned back to the ministry. Hermione stood waiting for him in her office, stacks of parchment towering around her as usual. You're just in time, she said briskly, motioning him inside. There's been another sighting. He raised an eyebrow. Another Patronus? Not exactly, she replied, lowering her voice. Something older. The Department of Mysteries has recorded a surge in ambient magic across the British Isles. It's as if the very air hums with residual energy. They think it's linked to the wellspring, its light or what's left of it, spreading through the world. Harry frowned. And that's bad? Hermione shook her head slowly. Not necessarily, but unpredictable. The line between thought and manifestation grows thin when magic resonates at this scale. Dreams might take form, memories could awaken. She handed him a thin silver shard, smooth, cold, and faintly glowing. They found this near Stonehenge, she explained. Residual wellspring matter. It reacts to your magic specifically. Harry turned the shard over in his hand. The light pulsed once, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. So it's calling again. Hermione nodded. Whatever you did in the mirror didn't just restore balance. It awakened something larger. You may have joined the light and shadow, but in doing so, you gave both a voice. And now they're answering. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of a brass clock. Harry slipped the shard into his pocket. Then I'll listen. That night he dreamt of the sea. The waves were silver under a pale sky, the horizon endless. On the shore stood the phoenix, the same one he had seen above Azkaban, its wings folded, its eyes fixed upon him. Why have you come? Harry asked. The phoenix tilted its head. Because the light you set free cannot remain caged within one soul. It seeks to heal the world that bore its wound. The wellspring's light? The phoenix nodded. You carry its heart, but the world holds its echo. It will bloom where it must and fade where it should. You are its guardian, not its master. Harry looked down. The sand beneath his feet shimmered with tiny sparks, each one a memory, a life, a dream. And what happens if the balance falters again? The phoenix spread its wings and the wind filled with warmth. Then you will remember this. Light does not conquer shadow. It teaches it to rest. The bird took flight, its feathers trailing fire, and the dream dissolved into dawn. When he awoke, the sky beyond the window was already bright. The silver shard lay upon his nightstand, its glow now gone. Yet Harry felt no fear, no weight of foreboding, only quiet understanding. The wellspring's work was not his alone. It belonged to the world now. The balance would hold for a time until someone else was called to restore it again. That was the way of things. Light and dark, courage and fear, all part of the same endless story. As the morning sun touched the fields outside, Harry went to the garden. Dew glistened on the grass, and the air smelled of earth and spring. He lifted his wand one final time. Expecto Patronum. The stag appeared radiant and calm, but he was not alone this time. Around him shimmered other shapes, small, luminous forms that leapt and danced through the air. Foxes, hares, owls, all made of pale light and soft shadow. They circled him like a constellation come to life. Ginny stepped into the doorway, a smile curving her lips. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Harry nodded. "They're free." For a moment he watched them rise higher and higher, their silver trails weaving through the morning sky. Then, one by one, they faded into the light, leaving only the gentle warmth of their passing. And as the last of the glow vanished, Harry understood that the wellspring's curse had become its blessing, the proof that light and darkness, hope and sorrow could dwell side by side without fear. The story that had begun in shadow had ended in dawn, and though the world would move on, carrying new mysteries, new dangers, new legends, yet untold, one truth would remain as steady and as sure as the magic in his wand. There is no light without shadow, and no shadow that cannot learn to shine. The years passed quietly, like pages turning in a book whose end had already been written, but whose words still glowed faintly with life. The world had changed, though few, beyond the oldest witches and wizards, remembered the tremors that once rippled through its magic, the curse that had darkened the Patronus. The wellspring that had bound and freed it had faded into legend. A tale whispered in the halls of Hogwarts, half believed by children who chased one another through candlelit corridors, daring each other to whisper the name of the cursed Patronus. Harry Potter had long ceased to correct them. He'd grown older, his hair now streaked with silver, his eyes lined from years of work and wonder. But the fire within him, the quiet strength that had carried him through every battle, had not dimmed. The light he carried from the wellspring still pulsed faintly within him, an old rhythm that seemed to move with his heart. The world was peaceful again. Hogwarts thrived. The ministry stood firm, and yet from time to time strange lights were seen over distant moors and mountain peaks. Glimmers of silver that shimmered and vanished, leaving behind whispers of laughter and calm. Wizards spoke of the echoes of the Patronus, saying that they appeared wherever courage or kindness were needed most. Harry never confirmed nor denied it. He and Ginny lived still at Godric's Hollow. Their children had grown, James an Auror like his father, Albus a scholar studying ancient magic, and Lily, fierce and bright, the youngest professor Hogwarts had seen in a century. The cottage was filled with letters, laughter, and the occasional explosion from a poorly contained experiment. And yet on certain nights, when the moon hung full and pale, Harry would rise quietly, wrap his cloak about him, and walk out into the village. The old paths were familiar beneath his feet, the lane past the church, the gate to the fields, the slope that led to the forest's edge. He would stop there where frost gleamed silver on the grass and stand for a time in silence. It was on such a night, many years after the wellspring's light had faded from the world, that the quiet changed. The wind stirred, soft but insistent, carrying with it the faintest hum of old magic, the sound of something awakening, though not in anger. The stars seemed to shimmer brighter, and as Harry lifted his gaze, he saw them shift, forming patterns that reminded him of constellations he had once known. A single point of light fell from the heavens, landing softly in the field before him. It shimmered for a moment, then took shape, a silver figure, bright and soft-edged, like moonlight given life. Harry felt his breath catch. It was the Phoenix, not the fierce, blazing creature that had sung of sacrifice and rebirth, but a gentler thing woven of mist and memory. Its eyes glowed with knowing warmth, And when it spoke, its voice was like the whisper of leaves. "You have carried the wellspring's heart faithfully," it said, "and the world has healed beneath its quiet light." Harry bowed his head slightly. "I only did what I could." "You did what few would dare," said the Phoenix. "You walked where both light and shadow dwell and did not let either claim you. That balance has shaped the world that followed. It stepped closer, its wings spreading wide. But the light is not meant to remain in one heart forever. All things that are given must, in time, be returned." Harry felt a deep calm settle over him, though part of him already knew what the creature meant. "You're saying it's time." The Phoenix inclined its head. "Time for the wellspring to rest once more, and for the world to carry its own light." He looked past it to the sleeping village, to the distant steeple that gleamed under the stars. He thought of Ginny asleep by the fire, of his children, grown and strong, of the laughter and the lessons, the losses and the joys. It had been a full life, one built not from battles but from peace, earned and kept. He smiled faintly. "Then I'm ready." The Phoenix lifted one wing, and a soft wind swept through the field, carrying with it the scent of rain and spring. The silver light that had long lain in Harry's chest stirred and rose, not as a burden leaving him, but as something fulfilled. It shimmered above his heart for a moment, then flowed into the Phoenix's waiting form. The creature shone brighter, its wings turning to pure light. "The balance will live on," it said gently. "Wherever courage rises against despair, the Patronus will answer, not as curse nor weapon, but as memory." Harry's knees felt weak, and he sank slowly to the grass. The wind grew still again. The Phoenix gave a final, lilting cry that echoed through the night, then dissolved into countless points of silver light that drifted upward, scattering into the stars. When the last of them vanished, Harry sat alone in the quiet field. For a long while he simply watched the sky, his heart steady and full. The next morning, Ginny found him there, asleep among the dew-covered grass, his wand resting loosely in his hand. His face was peaceful, and beside him shimmered a faint outline of light, the shape of a stag, bowing its head. Word of his passing spread swiftly, carried by both tears and reverence. Wizards and witches gathered from across the world to pay their respects, not just to the hero who had defeated dark lords and ended wars, but to the man who had restored balance to magic itself. At Hogwarts, the students gathered in the great hall where a single silver Patronus, neither bright nor dark, but softly luminous, appeared above them, filling the space with warmth. It bowed once, then faded, leaving behind a quiet stillness that felt like gratitude. In Godric's hollow, Ginny buried the silver coin, the last relic of the wellspring, beside his grave. The rune upon it had changed one final time. It bore neither the mark of shadow nor of light, but a simple symbol of balance. Two halves of a circle joined in harmony. Years later, when the world spoke of Harry Potter, it was no longer with tales of war or prophecy. They called him the Keeper of the Light, the one who had taught even darkness to rest. And when children learned to cast their first Patronus, their teachers would tell them, "Your Patronus is not just your happiest memory. It is your courage made visible, the harmony of what you've been and what you've overcome. It is the song of balance, the echo of the one who taught the world to remember." And sometimes, on nights when the wind was clear and the moon hung low, Travelers passing through Godric's Hollow would swear they saw a silver stag standing by the forest's edge, watching the stars. It would bow its head once as though in farewell and vanish into the light.